Fractured headlines here. Let's talk about America's housing affordability problem. If we look back early in our history, many settlers to the United States went west and they built sod houses out of chunks of grass. And those sod houses, while they offered shelter for the early settlers, they were notorious for leaking water and leaking wind and bringing in bugs and generally not being too terribly comfortable. Some of the housing in the cities had other problems. They were cramped, apartments were cramped. Often these buildings uh, flooded, especially on the ground floor and on the basement apartments. They were not sanitary, and there were shared bathrooms among the people who lived in the apartments and lived in the rooming houses and such. Back in the 1800s, 1800s, and things progressed. And let's just talk about the size of houses. Back in 1953, I've got my little fact sheet here. I think I'll stick that right to the computer. Back in 1953, the average square footage of a new build of a house was 983 square feet. Modest size home. In 1960, 10 years later, the square footage had crept up to 1,289 square feet on the average. 1970, all the way to 1,500 square feet. 1980, the average square footage of a new home construction. 1980 was 1,595 square feet. 1990, it topped 2,080 square feet. Uh, 2000, the year 2000, 2,266 square feet was the average square footage of a new home that had been constructed. In 2010, it got even larger, 2,392 square feet. And in 2020, 2,333 square feet. Now, this is 2025 right now, and the average square footage of a new home construction is 2,408 square feet in the United States. Now, I do understand that people have gotten bigger. Obesity is a rampant problem. It's a big problem in the United States, but people haven't gotten so big that between 1950, with less than 1,000 square feet, and 2025, the average house being 2.5 times that size. I don't think the average American has increased 2.5 times in size. And so it's not the size of the bodies occupying the house, it's the desires of the home buyers, and it is the ambition to make money on the part of the home builders, which have contributed to the growth of the size of these houses. And along with that, you've got the problem of urban sprawl. A lot of farmland, a lot of good farmland, solid, good soil has been lost to subdivisions, to suburban sprawl. And that's because of the prevalence of the single family home built on the standard quarter acre lot, or in some cases in a more spaced out community, maybe a half an acre lot or even larger. Quarter acre lot seems to be the standard in many communities. So that kind of sets the framework for the discussion. Now, it's while it's true that the size of houses, uh, new build construction has continually gone up, there has been a movement in the United States to build what are called tiny homes or tiny houses. And in 2025, the average square footage of a tiny home is only 225 square feet, or less than 1/10 of the size of the average new build house. That's a radical difference right there, 225 square feet. Tiny homes or tiny houses average between 100 and 400 square feet, and they are also built up to 600 square feet. Now, there are some communities that are friendly toward tiny homes, but overall, in the United States, zoning regulations, local building rules have made it very difficult for people to place these tiny homes, especially the ones that are on wheels. Now, if you take a standard quarter acre piece of land, it's quite easy to position four tiny homes on one of those quarter acres, and that includes parking for the cars that are involved with those four homes. You can see that with only an average of 225 square feet, there are far fewer materials required to build a home of that size. And also, it would take a lot less to heat or to cool a tiny home, making it a lot easier on the environment. We do have a global warming problem. Fossil fuels are being consumed at an unsustainable level, and tiny homes can be part of the solution to that problem, as well as a solution to the affordability problem for many Americans who are not able to come up with the money to move into one of these oversized 2,400 square foot homes. There are some interesting communities around the country. I saw a YouTube video a while back about a Texan builder who deconstructs large old homes and saves the valuable architectural trim, the pieces from those buildings, whether that be windows or trim or uh, posts or whatever he can salvage from the buildings that are being torn down, and he recycles those into custom-made tiny homes, which feature vintage, oh, mantles, vintage doors, vintage windows. And it's his contention that those materials, those items, those architectural details are longer lasting than today's plastic windows and doors, which have a much shorter lifespan. And so I don't remember exactly where that guy was located, but it was somewhere in Texas, I believe. And he figured out um, which bits of land he could position those on. There was a community or two down there where the tiny homes are located. And the people really enjoy having lower heating and cooling bills, and also the taxes are lower on a smaller home. Other states around the country are also uh, look favorably on tiny homes, but overall, there's been kind of a lag in zoning changes, which prohibits people from building or positioning tiny homes on quarter acre lots or half acre lots, your standard city size lot. Detroit has a program, if I recall the details correctly. Uh, the tiny homes are 300 or 400 square feet. They're not extremely tiny, but they're small. They're very small, and the people pay $400 a month. It's a it's a it's a it's rent to own, basically. It's rent to own, and at the end of, I believe it was 7 years. At the end of 7 years, if they pay their $400 a month, they get a title to the home, and that, I believe, a title also to the bit of land on which the home sits. Wonderful program. $400 a month is about what you want to be paying if you're making $7.25 or $9 an hour or $10 or $11 an hour in some low-paid job where it's difficult to afford more expensive apartments or houses. It really threw a lifeline. That Detroit program really threw a lifeline to a lot of low-income workers who otherwise would not have been able to achieve the dream of owning their own home. I don't, I did the research this morning for the average square footage required for new builds across the country, and even with AI, they weren't able to come up with a strong answer. But there are many places that have a 1,000 square foot minimum for a new home construction. Ohio has a 950 square foot minimum requirement for a new build. And so states and communities have a long ways to go in creating the opportunities for folks to pursue an alternative when it comes to housing. Now, I think of my own home, which was built in 1971 in Florida, and it's about 1,400 square feet. Back in 1970, 1,500 square feet was the average. I think ours is 1,440, so it comes in right close to the average. It's a three-bedroom, two-bath, and it sits on a little better than a quarter acre. But you know, if we pulled that house out, if that house was removed from that property, it would be plenty of room to put at least four tiny homes, including driveways and carports for the vehicles that would be involved in that. Many Florida communities are really spread out, and they have kind of moved into the Everglades. They've taken over animal habitat, and the whole idea of urban sprawl has it's part of the destruction of native, of habitats for animals, and um, uh, we need to find a higher density, lower cost way of housing people. Now, it's true that apartments have different requirements. Apartments and studio apartments, for instance, in Chicago, I was researching. I believe it said 200 or 250 square feet is the minimum for a studio. You can see behind me right now, I'm in a studio, and this studio is probably around 500 square feet. It's a pretty large studio, but even 500 square feet, there are two of us living here. We've been here for years. 500 square feet is pretty small. It's about a third of the size of our house in Florida, but we're comfortable here. You learn to adjust to a smaller space. So yeah, that's what today's chat is about. Uh, we need to change. And I've got notes here. Here are my extensive notes right here. You know. We need to see some changes in zoning laws across the United States to make it possible for people to realize their dream of owning their own home, especially if they are not able to afford the larger homes. And we also probably should incentivize builders to focus less on the more profitable larger homes and get real about what Americans really need in terms of housing. There is a need for small houses. Not everybody is mom and dad and four kids. There are a lot of families that are just two people, or a lot of situations where a person is living by himself, or maybe there's a mom and a dad and a kid. Um, you don't need 2,400 square feet for that. The cost, I didn't do the research on the average cost of a mortgage payment, but I have a pretty good idea that for most folks, a $1,500 or $2,000 a month mortgage payment is quite common. Contrast that with Detroit's program, where the people, this is a few years ago, maybe it's gone up a little bit, but they were paying $400 a month for their tiny home. Well, if you're not working at a high-paid job and you're only paying 400 a month for your housing payment, and you have ownership, you anticipate owning that home after 7 years and making a payment, that is cause for hope right there. That makes it possible for you to go to your job, maybe at a restaurant, or wherever the job is that doesn't pay a ton of money, and still live a comfortable, respectable life, and have some dignity, some privacy, and have your own place. So yeah, look into it. If you haven't done research, there are lots and lots of videos on YouTube about tiny homes, tiny houses. It's a growing trend. It's only being held back by zoning regulations and by local rules about what can go on a piece of property and how big the house needs to be. Something to think about as we go into the future, and as we more and more tap into the natural resources that go to building and heating and cooling our homes. Hey, this is Fractured Headlines, and I love looking at problems that we have, and thinking about solutions, and discussing politics and all that sort of thing. Um, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, feel free to subscribe. I'd be happy to have you do that. You can hit the like button if you feel so inclined, or hit the dislike button if you're feeling a little cranky this morning, and add a comment if you like. If you have experience with tiny homes yourself, uh, that would be great to hear from you. I certainly would like to like to discuss it with anyone who's interested in the topic. Meanwhile, once again, Fractured Headlines. Y'all have a fantastic day. I'll catch you in the next video.